actively researching at the moment, mapping its diversity and sort of assessing the threats to its existence. So again, showing you some very striking images here of plants in Oman. The one on the left is a species called Ebenus stellata. This is a member of the pea family. It is found growing in the high mountains in northern Oman. The central plant, something maybe some of you are familiar with, this is the desert rose. This is quite an enigmatic, and I think you would agree, very unusual looking species. This swollen base here is at the bottom is basically acts as a very large storage organ for water. So these succulent species have evolved in these drier parts of the world to become very efficient at holding water. This species you see here, this picture was taken in Jebel Samhan, which is part of the mountain range, the Dhofar mountain range, and that's where the plant is chiefly found in Oman. So all these plants, of course, grow in habitats, and Oman not only has a huge array of stunning plant species, it also has a vast palette of stunning landscapes. The top two pictures here are Jebel Akhdar and Jebel Shams. The one on the left there, the smaller picture at the top is the juniper and olea, the olive woodland on Jebel Akhdar, which stretches across into Jebel Shams. This is a very unique habitat occurring at very high altitude. The lower picture is something that most of you will be familiar with. Those of you lucky enough to live in Oman or visit Oman will know this is a wadi. Wadis are temporary or sometimes permanent water features across the Omani landscape. They are almost effectively like oases where you have running water. Where you have running water, you tend to have a lot of life, a lot of insects, a lot of plants, and of course, human settlement. The picture on the right is a photograph from Dhofar. This is Jebel Samhan. And here's another couple of photographs of Jebel Samhan. The image on the right is very important. This is cloud covers sitting along the escarpment of Jebel Samhan. This cloud cover is a part of what is the Kharif. The Kharif is the summer monsoon, which begins every year, sometime approximately around middle of June, runs until about middle of September. And this cloud that comes in from the monsoon hits the escarpment and effectively drenches the entire escarpment and the foothills with moisture. And that moisture triggers a very instantaneous reaction. And you go from a very, very dry landscape in the middle of May, and by the middle to late June, it looks like this. Two images here on the center and on the left. This is the woodland of the escarpment in southern Oman in probably sometime around July. And what you can see here is very dense ground vegetation. The central picture shows you exactly what it looks like. It's really thick. The fog and the mist is really, really dense. Often it's extremely difficult to drive. But that moisture, it doesn't actually rain that much, but the moisture that is collected and condensing on the leaves drips into the soil, providing a lot of moisture. That moisture immediately triggers the response of grasses, ferns, mosses, things you would associate with cloud forests in tropical or semi-tropical parts of the world. So this is a very, very unusual place. And it accounts for about 75% of the diversity of Oman's flora. The picture on the right here, I just included because this is probably one of Oman's most important tree species. Certainly, historically, this was highly, highly important financially and culturally for the country. This is Boswellia sacra. This is the frankincense tree. And of course, we can't not include a picture of the sand deserts. The sand deserts of Oman, the Sharqiya sands, which is south of Muscat, stretches down towards the central desert area. And then this image here is from the Rub al Khali, which is the empty quarter, beginning in western Oman and running across into Saudi Arabia. It is an enormous plot of barren sand. There's not a huge amount of vegetation in these areas, but the landscape themselves speak for themselves. So, why do we want to build a botanic garden? Well, Adna had alluded to some of those reasons, and I think some of the images I've shown you there clearly indicate that Oman has a very, very special and very, very unique flora. So this was brought into royal decree in 2006. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos at this time saw visionary, or was quite visionary in what he saw, in that the flora of Oman, being so unique, must be showcased, must be conserved and showcased for the people of Oman and the world in general. So had to do that. But one way of doing that is to build a botanic garden and try and conserve a botanic garden, try and conserve this flora that way. So botanic gardens, according to Botanic Garden Conservation International, are institutions holding documented collections of living plants for the purposes of scientific research, conservation, display, and education. So it's not just a park. Parks will have plants for display, but these are scientific collections based on very detailed documentation of species, habitats, threats, and so on. So the Oman Botanic Garden has two driving statements that keep things on track and keep things going. And the vision is that people are inspired to conserve and cherish the biodiversity and botanical heritage of Oman for a sustainable future. And the mission is to discover, cultivate, showcase, and protect Oman's unique plant diversity and ethnobotany through innovative research, exciting displays, and engaging communication. So these two statements are what, when we're discussing anything, planning strategies, we always refer back to these two statements to make sure that we're keeping our eye on exactly what we're doing. For a master plan, I'm not going to go into all the details about the master planning, but it is an extremely complex, multidisciplinary endeavor. And this was finalized in around 2016, if my memory serves me correctly. The plan you're looking at here is an overall image of the garden. Al Khud village is in the background. You can't see it obviously, but that's more or less where it's located. The central structure is the southern biome, that big glasshouse, domed glasshouse you see. On the left is the northern biome. I'll give it a bit more detail in a moment. You have all the areas in the center are external habitats. So what we're trying to do is showcase the main habitats of Oman. That's the high altitude mountains in the north, the southern mountains of Dhofar, wadis, the central desert areas, the Hukuf escarpment in southeastern Oman, and so on. So two areas are inside because they need to be in climatically controlled areas, and the rest are external. For the southern biome, because these plants in southern Oman are used to the Kharif, that monsoon period during June, they require cooler temperatures. Simply, the fact is that Muscat is extremely hot in the summer. We all know that temperatures can easily be above 45 degrees. For many of the species in that environment, they simply wouldn't survive that time. So we have to create a space in which the climate is controlled and plants can grow happily. So this is the southern biome, a 12,000 square meter, I would say glass house, but that's doing it a huge injustice. This is an incredible piece of engineering. This is an artistic rendering of what the southern biome will look like inside once it's complete. So you can get a scale. You can see the people walking along the footpaths during the Kharif period. So you get a sense of the size of this building. It is really enormous. Northern biome, which will deal with and grow the plants of northern Oman. That's the plants that are growing up at high altitude in Jebel Akhtar and Jebel Shams. Again, these species are used to cooler temperatures during the summer. They simply would not survive or thrive in Muscat at sea level during the summer period. So they need a climatically controlled space. Also, this area will deal very largely with some of the work that Abdurrahman and the team are doing in terms of ethnobotany, traditional plant uses, that's craft and medicine and so on, agriculture. So there will be a huge amount of education within this space. And the terraces there in front are date palms, and these will showcase the incredible engineering and ingenuity of the Falaj system. An entire Falaj system will be built or is being built in this area. This is inside the northern biome. Again, this is an artistic rendering. This is the high altitude juniper and olive woodland of Jebel Akhtar and Jebel Shams. Visitor center is where people will first enter the garden. When you come in here, you get orientated about where you go, you get tickets. There are all sorts of various options. You can enter directly into the garden. You can go via the cable car. You can go out one side and enter directly into the southern biome. So there's multiple options and everybody will be catered for. There are places to eat and rest and so on. The Habitats Pavilion is centered right in the middle of the garden, and this is very much an education space. This is to orientate people in terms of what they're looking at in the garden. It's to explain what habitats are, what species are, all done in a very user-friendly way. Although this is based on hard science, we are not going to overwhelm people with a lot of facts and figures because people just don't really follow that kind of thing. So we are planning our interpretation package and planning program is extremely extensive, and Kudena will discuss that in a little bit more detail later on. So I will now hand you over to Abdurrahman, who will discuss and explain to you exactly how we go about collecting these plants, which is an extremely challenging but very enjoyable endeavor. So over to you, Abdurrahman.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Darah. Hi, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. My first part will be I'll talk about collecting Oman wild plants. So collecting the country wild flora is one of the core tasks of Oman Botanic Garden. It is an essential work for the garden. So the team travel throughout the country, collecting the plants, native flora in forms of seeds, cuttings, whole plants, or even bulbs. Sometimes the team managed to translocate some plant species which are subjected to one of the infrastructure projects, like building roads, for example, pipelines. So by doing so, we are saving the plants as well as saving resources. In order to target the plant species, we invent something called production list. So production list is like, it's act as a guideline plan for our field collection expeditions. It is divided the country into habitats, which are further divided into zones and subzones. So those, for example, for the southern mountains, which are administratively known as Dhofar, they are giving the code A, and this is divided into zones. So from A1 to A5. So for example, A1 is representing the coastal plain and A5 is presenting the dry, nudged area of Dhofar dominated by Boswellia sacra or frankincense trees. So every individual collection is well labeled and identified in the field, but for those that are not known, so the team take herbarium specimens for further identification and verification. Once arrived to the garden, the seeds handled to the seed bank stuff in the seed. So in the seed bank, so the seeds are cleaned, weighed, and stored under good conditions. And for cuttings and whole plants, the bulbs also, they are handled directly to the propagation and production staff who grow them directly in the nursery. As you can see from these. So the nursery is actually opened in 2007 and 2008, sorry. And so it's contained the whole, whole of our plants so far. I think the second part will be talking about the documenting ethnobotanical knowledge. So if Dr. Darah, you can, move to the next slide. So Oman is a rich country of the ethnobotanical knowledge. You still can see people practicing, ethnobotany while traveling throughout the country. So documenting and showcase the country ethnobotanical knowledge is one of the garden vital rule of the garden. So we used to interview local expertise, and they talked about the plants. So sometimes we go with them in the field, but sometimes we also collect some plants for them, and we are sitting together, and then they start talking and discussing the plants. Sometimes we start, we are following different methodology. So I remember that we sometimes we use photos of the plants for people. Sometimes it is summertime, so we want to talk to the people in the summertime, and there is no, the plants are not available at that time. So we give them the pictures to identify the plants, but it is difficult. We know that it's difficult for people to identify the plants from the pictures because they need to touch and smell the plants. So we give up with that way, and we proceed with that. It's better to bring the plants as a natural plants. And you can see from this one of the pictures. So these slides showing actually our team from different habitat in Oman. So these slides showing my colleague Saif, for instance, he's collecting ethnobotanical knowledge from Bedouin people in Central Desert. So again, I mean, the knowledge is, Oman, as I said, it's rich in knowledge in ethnobotany. So I would say, and now I think I give the microphone to my colleague, Rodayna, to start talking about education. Okay, Rodayna.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Masa al-khair and good evening, everyone. Abdurrahman and Derek explained very well the Botanic Garden work and core work in science in collecting information. I'll be talking a little bit about education, and I think everyone knows that education and learning is an important part in any botanic garden, and Oman Botanic Garden is not different. Since the early establishment, Oman Botanic Garden has given education and awareness a great priority. And since early on, we, even though the Botanic Garden is not officially open, but we had our temporary visitor center as well as the nursery, and we started receiving our visitors. Our visitors, including students from different ages, and whether school students from public, private, or international schools, but also from colleges and universities. And our facilities, the nursery and the visitor center, created a place where students could learn more. And when years passed, we also collaborated with the Ministry of Education and teachers to develop programs that are linked to the school curriculum. And that was a great, because kids loved working in the garden, whether growing plants or learning about the life cycle of plants, or even just soil, water, anything that has to do with the environment. But also we were raising awareness and talking to them about conservation issues and environmental topics. Additionally, we have also collaborated with institutions such as Outward Bound Oman and Takatuf, where we help them to enhance their programs, and receiving those students in the garden to talk about more about environmental topics and conservation. Because we know that the future is in the hand of the youth, and that's what we have been discussing with them. Just before going to our staff slide, I'd like to say that the Botanic Garden always worked in accordance with the global strategy of plant conservation that created a clear roadmap for Botanic Garden work. And it's like cover the plant conservation, while the sustainable development goals go beyond that, and it's encompassing all of the activities in the Botanic Garden, including engaging with communication and communicating with the public, as well as empowering local communities. So our staff, also in terms of capacity building, our staff have been trained, whether in-house or abroad, in different fields, like botanical and horticultural fields. Here you can see Abdurrahman in one of the fields in Jabal Samhan, and that's a program that was developed by Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, and it was about taxonomy and practical field botany. And also Shadia on the top right picture with talking about pest and disease management, and at the bottom right, Leila in the Millennium Seed Bank in Kew Botanic Garden. As well as, like, we also gave training and to groups, and in this picture our colleague Salim Al-Rahbi giving showing the group here from the British Explorers Society, which we have collaborated with for 3 or 4 years on research, different expeditions, botanical expeditions, and he's showing them how to press herbarium specimens. Additionally, the Botanic Garden allowed people to go for higher education, and also to get skills and courses and program in different areas, and that's including higher education, master's, PhD, and also short courses. So education and public engagement is very important. We have also in many times throughout the years since the establishment participated in local, regional, and international conferences where we showcase the Botanic Garden work in science, in education, and also in designing a new Botanic Garden, since Oman Botanic Garden is considered a new project. And so that's about the education and the current status of Oman Botanic Garden. In the near future, inshallah, once the garden is open, and that's what we are working on, education and public engagement shall continue. And the learning process, once the garden is open, our interpretive exhibitions, which will be more interactive and engaging. As you can see from this picture, that's just a sketch, but things are being constructed right now. We have developed an amazing content, and also with the help of our designers, and a very extensive and comprehensive interpretive and interactive exhibits that will allow visitors to explore the rich natural treasures of Oman landscape. The spaces of the Botanic Garden will immerse the visitor with a balance of impact and engagement, of culture and science, of natural material and man-made material, and also of traditional techniques and contemporary technologies. But most of all, it will instill the visitor an understanding of the importance of habitats and plants. And this is a very exciting and will be one of a kind project with the museum that's showing the Omani habitats and plants with a lot of activities for the whole family. So leaving the most important thing to the end, and that's sustainability. And we cannot ignore sustainability. Of course, it's part of our vision and mission, as you have seen. So Oman Botanic Garden's commitment to sustainability began with the earliest feasibility stages of the project, and also has gained high level of support when both the master plan and also the design was presented and approved. We are aiming for a platinum LEED, and that's leadership in energy and environmental design, and we are scoring very well thanks to our designers, consultants, and also a contractor. And currently, I love to say this because not everyone knows this, but currently the nursery, which is about 10,000 square meter in size, is run by solar energy. And we are also expanding our photovoltaic farm to be on site to produce more than 2.9 megawatts of energy. And also in terms of sustainability, in other terms, we are practicing it on site protection by conserving the landscape shapes, geological features, and other stuff. We are also installing charging points for electrical cars while encouraging carpooling, and also having storage facilities for bicycle for people to come and instead of using their cars. So these are simple acts, but all under sustainability. And also in terms of water efficiency, we are reducing our water consumption by 40%, and that's by using high quality water fixtures, also using a very good system of irrigation, and also having a very dedicated line from Haya Water for our to irrigate our areas of planting, and also in recycling and reusing. Before going to acknowledgements, I'd like to say that Oman Botanic Garden would be an essential contributor to sustainability in Oman, and would help raise Oman's profile to become a regional leader and for excellence in sustainability, and for the relevance to today's societal needs. But also Oman Botanic Garden aim to be the response of Oman when it comes to treaties and conventions related to sustainability, climate change, and also plant diversity. So that's almost everything. But last but not least, We cannot just end this presentation without thanking a number of people and who were behind this project. And inshallah soon it will be seen and people can visit. Of course, thank you Sustainable Oman for inviting us today during this webinar series. But also we would like to send our gratitude and also prayers to the late His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, who was his visionary and wise ideas behind this project. Also Sultan Haytham for supporting this project. The Diwan of Royal Court, who is also, we are under the DRC, the Oman Botanic Garden staff, our colleagues. Without them, we wouldn't do all of these things. Of course, the project, thanking the project consultants, Arab and Grimshaw. Hi to people who are attending this presentation from them. Also international research partners, collaborators, and the attendees, of course, who are listening to us today. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that rich overview of the landscape and the flora and the project, of course, the Oman Botanical Gardens. And yes, it's a very strong statement to the vision and foresight of the Sultan to instigate that project. If I could ask you to just stop slide sharing and go back to the general views. For everyone, the grid view, that would be great, as we now go into the question and answers section. So we've had a few in already on this platform, and we've also had some in via other methods. So could I just ask we go to full panel view, the gallery view, so that between our three speakers, we can divide up these questions. Now, the intention is that we close out about 8 o'clock, but we've had a few questions in, so if people don't mind, we might slip past a little bit beyond that time frame. But from my side, I just want to hand over to Mariam, who's joined us to take over this section. But I'm sure I'll probably jump in with some questions if there's time. So Mariam, maybe I can hand over.
Yeah, thank you, speakers, Ghadayna, Derek, and Abdurrahman. I really appreciate the time you took to present to us. The content that you had presented today was very rich, and I think it's very important that the attendees, myself, the rest of the panelists learned a little bit more about the efforts of the Oman Botanic Gardens, whether it be educational, community outreach, and even conservation of the rich flora and fauna of Oman. Now, perhaps maybe this is something you had touched on very briefly during your presentation, but I think with such a grand establishment such as Oman Botanic Gardens, you are talking about flora and fauna, the benefits, whether it be medicinal and so on. Are these aspects that you keep in mind also for the growth of a niche of the economical development of the country? Is it something that you believe that can be a contributing factor to the economic development in Oman?
Anybody want to answer that? Well, okay, I'll make a couple of points, and if somebody wants to jump in, they can add. Yeah, I mean, on a number of levels, I think from the very basic level, it's a visitor attraction of sort of global significance. So I think it will be an addition for people to come here and visit. That's locals, of course, we hope that will be regular visitors. Regional people from the Gulf will come. There's nothing like this at all in the region. There's nothing like this really globally, to be honest. And then international visitors will come. So there will be a generation of income from that side of things. Also, the sale of plants, the sale of products developed from the garden. We have lots of links with local communities who will make traditional products from baskets and so on. So all of these things will be sold. We hope then that the money generated from the sale of products from local villages will go directly back into the community. And then beyond that, you're looking at a vast amount of capacity building for horticulturalists, young scientists in Oman to come to the garden and train. The garden has the potential to become a regional focal point for the training of horticulturists, educationists, and botanists. Again, this is something that is not that common in the region. So from that side of it, touristically point of view, capacity building for young people in the country, the potential is absolutely enormous. So, I mean, from my point of view, they're the two key areas I see.
Okay. My next question, and then I can move it on to the other panelists. It may seem quite controversial, but as you had pointed out, the decree came out in 2006, but it took approximately a little more than 14 years to finally establish the Oman Botanic Gardens as we see it now, and hopefully in the future with all the renderings produced by Arup and Grimshaw into realization. Is there a sort of transitional stage that you had to go through in order to fulfill the availability or the variety of plants within the establishment? I mean, it's a very complex structure because I'm an architect by background, and I've seen the renderings, and it seems quite of a complex structure, and even bringing all of these plant typologies from all over Oman requires care, learning how to grow them in that specific environment. So yeah. Is that, let's say that 14-year timeline, does it entail all of these aspects?
Anybody want to answer?
I think, as you said, Mariam, it's by itself is a complex project, and it's not just in terms of building, but it's also plants and all the learning that came behind. But we always thought that the Botanic Garden, anyway, is not about buildings. And when it's open, since it was established, we were open for public. We were receiving visitors. We were educating people. We also were, in terms of capacity building, training the staff, and also learning more about Omani plants and collecting information that have never been collected before. So this growth also, we don't consider it as we are late in terms of all these 14 years that we haven't been opened officially, like in terms of the building, but it is a learning curve. And I think it's once the garden, the whole buildings are open officially, people will understand like when they associate the Royal Decree 2006, but you just opened, it's not a building. So in my opinion, that's the garden was open since 2006, actually, since we started.
It's more of a process, you mean? It's more of like the stages. I'm actually glad you mentioned the fact that, I mean, I personally didn't know that you guys had been open to taking in groups until Sadhana mentioned it, actually, when she joined our group. That you guys take in visitors, you actually bring in kids from schools, because no one really knows or understands the world of horticulture, botany, or any of the subcategories within that specific, let's say, umbrella. And I think it's a very great initiative for you to educate kids from, from a young age, that there's a huge sector that's untouched in Oman that requires capacity building. So I'll stop babbling and I'll allow April to perhaps ask you some of the questions sent by the participants.
Yeah, thank you. I think, okay, so we'll just bounce between us. That's perfect. Actually, what I thought was really beautiful, and certainly the current focus at many levels, right up to the top, to the UN, which is the focus on native local knowledge and the understanding of the land and the connection of flora and fauna to the land, and how best to cultivate that and manage that sustainably. So you guys are already doing that, and I thought it was really lovely how you have been cultivating the knowledge, gathering the knowledge and storing that knowledge, as well as the plants. Perhaps you want to talk about that a little bit more, but I'll just dive into the questions that we've been getting. So the first one that's received is the discussion around the effects of climate change on the fauna and the distribution in Oman. So the question is, what is the effect? Are you seeing an effect? Are you worried about an effect on the endemic species here?
Well, yes, there is a. We seem to see an effect. You know, you need to have you need to have long-term data to really be sure, but there does appear to be an effect. So, for example, if you're looking at Jebel Akhdar in the north, the Jebel Shams, so the expected scenario will be that temperature will increase and precipitation will either reduce or the seasonality will shift. So what that means is that plants that are growing at high altitude are being forced to grow even higher. They're being forced up that mountain where the temperatures are cooler. So eventually you reach the top of a mountain, there's nowhere else to go. And these species then run out of space. And that's a sort of a doomsday scenario where, you know, basically plants run out of space and they become extinct. In Dhofar, I mentioned very briefly the Kharif, the summer monsoon, which is a very complex interaction between the landscape and the climate. But again, huge amount of that vegetation that grows in Dhofar is highly reliant on that summer moisture. So if there's a shift in the intensity of the Kharif or in the duration of the Kharif, then you're going to see an immediate impact. And we suspect we're seeing shifts in that Kharif already, and some species, particularly enigmatic species like the dragon blood tree, which grows in southern Oman and Yemen. It's a highly restricted species and very, very important. We suspect that shifts in the Kharif are having a negative impact on these populations. So yes, this is why it's so important to gather. One of the things that we do is we collect a vast amount of seed. And seeds are very useful in the sense that they contain a huge amount of genetic diversity and they can be stored in a very small space. So not only are we collecting seeds for the cultivation of the Omani flora and the showcasing of the Omani flora, we're also targeting what are the Oman red list species. And those red list species are plants that are threatened to some degree or another. And there are over 200, maybe 267, maybe more than that now, rare and threatened species or red list species in Oman. So we're trying to capture all of those in seed in large numbers from genetically representative populations. So that will be a storage for the future. If we do lose them on the mountain, at least we have them in the seed bank, and maybe we can do something in the future for those individuals.
April, I'll just jump in and I'll ask at least one of the questions here that we have from the attendees. This is from Peter Farrington. This is an absolutely inspiring initiative. I had the pleasure to visit a couple of years back and I'm looking forward to seeing it when completed. Can you speak about if and how the OBG will educate and accommodate wildlife? Example, birds, mammals, insects, as well as soils education and research. Thank you. Should I repeat it?
No, that's all right. Got it. In terms of, thank you so much, Peter. In terms of educating people regarding generally biodiversity, we are not just like, okay, it's a botanic garden. Of course, our focus is plant. But as I mentioned earlier, that we have developed some programs with the schools that's linked to their curricula. And we are have programs that are not just linked to plants. And that's fine. And we do accommodate that kind of thing, like wildlife, including wildlife. And also in the Botanic Garden interpretation that will happen later, inshallah soon, we are including like some mammals, their habitats, where do they live, also some desert animals and in the central desert. And that's not only plants, but also wildlife, what kind of wildlife exists in those habitats, because it's an ecosystem, it's a full ecosystem, it's not just plants. So we are covering that very well. In terms of soil or other parts, soil is also important for plants. And we have kind of did a lot of research in that area in collaboration with other institutions locally. And we will have our research facilities allowing researchers to conduct the research in the Botanic Garden, or providing the materials or the plants or the habitats to conduct the research. So that's absolutely a yes, and we are currently and will continue doing that.
Do you mind if I just add a very quick point to that? Hi, Peter. Long time no see. Thanks for the question. one of the interesting things about the increase of biodiversity on the site is when the site was fenced in 2006. So it was an enormous fence completely sealing off the 430 hectares. So because of that fence, there's been no grazing on site in that time. Very, very little grazing. And the odd time a camel has managed to get in or a goat has managed to get in. But in general, there's been zero grazing. So the recovery in terms of the vegetation has been incredible. Once you have a small shower of rain or a period of rain, you have an immediate response from the soil seed bank. So you have a huge amount of grasses, annual plants, and shrubs suddenly coming into their own after a period of rain. This would not be the case if we had grazing on site. So with that vegetation, you get the associated wildlife. There's a huge amount of bees, insects, reptiles, everything you can see on site. So when the place is slightly damp or wet, it's absolutely humming with life. It's incredible, and birds in particular. So,
okay. Another one we'll add here. Hello, thank you very much this is from Roberta Morano. Thank you very much for a wonderful talk. I'm very much looking forward to being able to visit the Oman Botanical Gardens. My question is linguistic related. Are you planning to have an archive or store system in place to save and preserve the local and indigenous names of Omani plants that visitors or researchers can consult? I think perhaps you kind of touched on that during the presentation, but maybe you can maybe talk about it a little bit more.
May I jump in? Because I think it's a kind of question that perhaps ties to Abdulrahman when you're collecting and conversing with the local communities. Yeah, that question about how you're capturing the local Omani names, but how, to add to that, how have you found local communities in terms of receptiveness to your initiatives? If you could answer both those questions, that's all right. Abdulrahman, that's over to you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question because the connection is not, good on me. So can you repeat the question, please?
There's two questions. It relates to the archiving and of the traditional Omani names. So as you're going out and reaching to local communities, how you're collecting that information, is that being documented and preserved? And then just generally, how are you finding local communities supporting the initiative of the Botanical Gardens?
Well, I'm glad to say that as a small country, Oman is very diverse. It's not just in plants. It is also rich in the knowledge and also rich. So that Oman is also, there are 6 languages exist. 6 living languages exist in the country. So from the south to the north. And so while we are collecting these kind of data, we're collecting the names, especially by using the local language. And that also, reach the experience, make it more richer and so. People, they understand when we, going to them, interview them, and ask them about the plant, what the plant they use, especially that when we introduce them that it's a national thing that we are going to do, and it's by the name of the Sultan, because that they have a great great respect of the Sultan, so they feel proud. Actually, people start to feel proud, and they are doing something for their country. So everything comes very, very easy. So people understand what we are doing, and also we actually as a team now we are preparing like publications. So we published our work. Just recently, we published some work about using medicinal plants in Eastern Hajar Mountain. And my colleague Saif, he is preparing something about using plants in Musandam area. And now also we are working on boxes. So it is like encyclopedias for each of the areas in Oman. So it is, as I said, it is very rich. area, not touchable, I mean, yet, especially in northern Oman. At least in southern Oman, there is one reference, which is Plants of the Dhofar as a book. I mean, it's published in the 80s. But for northern Oman and central Oman, there is nothing published yet. So we are, I mean, working on that. We are working on that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So actually, just taking on the answer that you gave us, you mentioned that you are also understanding the medicinal value of some of them, and you're sharing that knowledge through perhaps books that you'll be publishing based on these findings, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, because of the reason why I was kind of highlighting that, it goes back to the first question I asked, which is having that knowledge can actually re-emphasize the economical advantages it can have also for Amman. So people can realize, you know, there's other properties to the plants that they actually see, and they can utilize them for other aspects, for working on the economic development in Amman in the niches. Anyhow, so you answered that, which is wonderful. Okay. We have two more questions, and then I think perhaps April, there's one more.
Actually, I think we might be a little bit time constrained. So what I propose is I've copied all the questions, and I think if our presenters are amenable to it, we perhaps might do a sort of follow-up piece around this, because actually it's so rich. And I feel like your responses would not be given enough time if considering. So perhaps I propose that, as I see we're having the attendees already closing out, so it would be within the hour. What do you guys feel about that? We do a follow-up on this.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you guys have as the Oman Botanic Garden is something that we've never had in Amman, obviously also in the region. And I believe probably 100% of the attendees, besides the ones that actually visited the center, benefited a lot from knowing what you guys do, whether it be community outreach, educational, conservation, archiving. And this is amazing work. I'm dumbfounded, first of all. And I appreciate all the work that you guys are collectively doing as a team, as designers, what have you. And I know Sadhana had spoken about it before, but this is giving us a completely different view of what you guys are doing. I mean, it's a great, rich, let's say, maybe it took 16 years, but it's a fantastic 16 years, and we're getting a great result out of it.
And I just say that in terms of taking time, these great things do take time. If you look at Kew Gardens in London, it's 250 years old. Many of the European botanic gardens are hundreds of years old, and they took a lot of time, but they're still there. So you do it right and you do it well, and it lasts, you know. This is how we think of it, you know.
You're right. Yeah. All right.
Perhaps any parting words from our three presenters as we prepare to sign off?
Just thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure. And I think a follow-up session would be great to give all the questions and answers, because as you said, there's so much to be said, and 20 minutes or 14 minutes are not enough.
Yeah, we just I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to share what the project is achieving in Oman. It's an incredibly important project, and it is a wonderful legacy from His Majesty Sultan Qaboos that this has continued and is going to flourish. And I imagine that many of the benefits we don't even realize yet. So the future is very bright with this project. Let's hope that it inspires others of a similar nature.
All right.
Yes, I would like to thank you very much for this. I mean, again, I mean, this project is it's a fantastic project. It's an amazing project. It's with lots of potentials. I mean, every day that we are working, I mean, we find there is like it's opened another area, another window. Which reflect that the project with lots of potentials, either scientifically or as a tourist destination. So thank you so much for this, for highlighting. For our project. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mariam, perhaps close.
So thank you again to Derek, Abdurrahman, and Ghudayna for making time and sitting with us and educating us, whether it be the attendees or us, the panelists. And inshallah, we will target another panel discussion where we can actually delve in a little bit more in what you guys are doing, your current programs, your future programs, and what you guys are basically doing, your everyday, day-to-day activities. I think it would be very beneficial. I think it'll answer a lot more questions. And I appreciate greatly the efforts that you guys are taking in order to make this vision a reality. So thank you very much. And we will see you, inshallah, the next panel discussion. We will announce it on our Instagram page. So to all the attendees, we thank you very much for joining us, and keep your eyes peeled. I will put the Instagram handle on the chat for you to follow us in case you're not following us, so that you can check out the timings for an upcoming second webinar with these guys and any follow-up webinars that are related to our SDGs. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ghudayna. Thank you, Abdulrahman. Thank you, Sadhan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And nice seeing you all through the internet.
Yeah. Yes, this is the new way. Okay, see you.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Same to you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.